People didn't notice it all at once. There was no announcement, no official statement, no dramatic headline flashing across the screen. It started quietly, almost invisibly. One missed appearance, then another. A familiar name absent from the year-end stages everyone expected him to be on. At first, it felt temporary, a scheduling issue, a deliberate pause. But as weeks turned into months, a strange question began to circulate. Not loudly, not aggressively, but persistently. Like a thought you can't quite shake before falling asleep. Are Wang Yibo's fans slowly leaving? Not out of anger, but out of silence. I remember the first time that thought crossed my mind. It wasn't sparked by gossip or criticism. It came from absence. In an industry where constant presence is treated as proof of relevance, silence feels unsettling, especially when it belongs to someone who once dominated headlines simply by showing up. Wang Yibo didn't fall out of favor. He didn't stumble publicly. He simply stepped back. And that decision, quiet as it was, sent ripples through an audience that had grown used to constant connection. For nearly 2 years, there were no new drama announcements tied to his name. No film crews, no countdown posters, no last-minute surprises at New Year galas. In a landscape where exposure often equals existence, his name began to appear less frequently. Not because it was erased, but because it wasn't being replenished. And that's when the unease truly set in. Fans didn't ask where he went. They asked something far more uncomfortable. What does it mean to follow someone who is no longer reaching back? A single chart made the rounds online. Actors from the same generation, upcoming projects, release schedules. Next to Wang Yibo's name sat a 0. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't accusatory, it was factual. And sometimes, facts are the most confronting form of drama. Because numbers don't argue, they simply exist. That 0 became a mirror, reflecting not just a career choice, but a growing emotional gap. What followed wasn't outrage. There were no mass unfollows announced with declarations of disappointment. Instead, there was something quieter and perhaps more honest. People stopped refreshing, stopped clicking, stopped waiting. Not because they stopped caring, but because caring without response is exhausting. Fans don't only admire skill or success, they build routines around presence. A new project to anticipate, a performance to replay, a moment to share. When those moments disappear, the relationship doesn't end dramatically. It fades gently, almost apologetically. Many fans described it as a rational decision. Not rejection, not betrayal, simply recognizing that the emotional exchange had slowed to a point where it no longer felt balanced. In the modern entertainment world, fandom is sustained not by obligation, but by feeling seen. When updates grow sparse and appearances rare, even the most devoted supporters begin to question where they fit into the picture. And yet, there was another side to the story, one that didn't surface until much later. It didn't come from rumours or online speculation. It came from someone within the industry who rarely speaks without purpose. Du Hua, the founder of Yuehua Entertainment, addressed Wang Yibo's situation in a way that surprised many. She didn't mention numbers. She didn't mention market share or rankings. She spoke about health. About peace, about the fact that Wang Yibo joined the company as a teenager, and over the years, their relationship had evolved beyond contracts and schedules. It had become personal. That single shift in language changed the tone of the conversation, because suddenly, the absence wasn't framed as neglect or indifference. It was framed as choice. A conscious decision to prioritize well-being in an environment that rarely rewards slowing down. In an industry built on constant output, choosing restraint is almost a radical act. As people looked closer, the pattern became clearer. The extreme sports, the mountains, the snow, the calculated risks far away from red carpets and studio lights. This wasn't withdrawal, it was redirection. Not an escape from responsibility, but a search for something grounding. Where acting demands emotional exposure, these pursuits demanded focus and presence. Where the industry moves fast, nature moves honestly. This perspective didn't erase the disappointment fans felt, but it softened it. It reframed the silence, not as abandonment, but as a different rhythm. Still, understanding doesn't automatically restore connection. And that is where the real tension lies. An artist has every right to step back, to protect their pace, to redefine success on their own terms. But fans, too, have the right to respond to what they experience. Loyalty cannot survive indefinitely on memory alone. The comparison many people avoided saying out loud eventually surfaced. Another star from the same breakout era chose a different path. Constant visibility, relentless output, appearances that reassured audiences of presence, if not always peace. Two careers shaped by the same moment, moving in opposite directions. Neither wrong, neither perfect, just different. What this situation reveals isn't a failure of fandom or a flaw in Wang Yibo's choices. It reveals a shift in how connection works. In the past, admiration could be sustained from a distance. Today, connection feels interactive. Fans don't just watch, they participate, they wait, they respond. And when that loop breaks, even briefly, it creates space for doubt. Perhaps the most honest truth is this: silence can be meaningful, it can be restorative, but it is rarely neutral. Over time, silence asks others to interpret it. Some will hear confidence, others will hear distance, and both interpretations are valid, shaped by personal expectation. So the question that lingers isn't whether fans are leaving, it's whether the space created by absence can eventually be filled again with something deeper, more intentional, and more sustainable. Whether return, when it happens, will feel like continuation or reinvention. If you've stayed with this story until now, thank you for giving it your time and attention. These conversations matter because they reflect how we relate not only to public figures, but to each other, through presence, patience, and understanding. If you enjoy thoughtful stories like this, told with care and respect for every perspective, I invite you to subscribe to StarWatch now. Your support helps us continue exploring the quiet moments behind the headlines. Thank you for watching, and I hope you'll stay with us for the next story.